Good evening, friends. I've had an interesting time researching the story of a past president, so sit back for this exploration of the links between Captain Gray and Irvine Burns Club, with some fascinating known knowns and some tantalising known unknowns along the way. CaptainGrayRM was twice our club's president, in 1834 and 1846. His attendance at annual celebrations, and even some of his contributions to them, are recorded in our minutes. Yet a century and a half later, he had become merely a name in the roll of past presidents, and no one even knew whether he was a local Irvine man. Well, he wasn't. In 2013, I started investigating, and can report my findings this evening. I've also highlighted, in 1851, Patrick Maxwell, an Edinburgh writer who comes into the story. And our 1830 president was Zachariah Siller, son of Burns's Dainty Davy. David Siller, the club's first vice-president, is also central to this story. He was probably Burns's closest friend from about 1781, when they were about 22. Siller set himself up as a teacher, but not being successful, opened a grocer's business in Irvine. He published his own poems, printed by Wilson in Kilmarnock, 2 years after Burns, who referred to him as a brother poet and as Dainty Davy. When the grocery business failed, he visited Edinburgh, perhaps looking for clerical work, and returned to run a school of navigation, Irvine being at that time a busy port. He joined the town council, and he and Dr. John Mackenzie gathered a group of respected local figures to form Irvine Burns Club in 1826. Returning to our main subject, Captain Gray, the 1829 minutes capture the lively mood of any meeting that he attended. And I read, "In addition to the poet's brother Davy, the meeting this year was honoured with the presence of Charles Gray, Esquire, Captain in the Royal Marines, an ardent admirer of the Ayrshire bard, and himself an author and a poet of celebrity. Besides chaunting with joyous glee several songs of his own muse, Captain Gray, with much animation and in true poetical style, recited an address to the club with several stanzas prepared by him for the occasion, which afforded sufficient testimony that this son of Mars is neither a young nor a lame acquaintance of the nine." Our minutes contain this poetic address, and they also mention his more prepared poem, named at the bottom there, "Address to the Shade of Burns, written for the 3rd anniversary of the Irvine Burns Club, 1829. I do not apologise for putting so many words on the screen. They are part of the necessary background, so you have the option of following any text I read or just sitting back and listening. The following year, 1830, Captain Gray sang his song "Blithe, Blithe and Merry Are We," which was voted a standing song of the club. The words of his song suggest a long friendly night lasting till daybreak. "Blithe, blithe and merry are we, blithe are we ane and a', often hae we canty been, but sic a nicht we never saw." David Siller, by then aged 70, was sadly too ill to attend and died later that year. The minutes show that Captain Gray attended at least 9 annual dinners at Irvine, missing once when he was away at sea. And the 1845 minutes mention him entertaining the gathering with a new poem. Quote, "An excellent poem promised last year by Captain Gray was read by him and listened to with the greatest delight." At the 1846 gathering, when he was president, his renditions are again mentioned, although not named. He also recited some lines. You'll see the mention halfway down the screen. Some lines produced for the occasion by Alexander Smart, of whom more shortly. Also, having never served as vice-chair prior to his 1846 presidency, Captain Gray agreed to fill that role in 1847. The honorary members nominated in 1846 are a start to identifying Captain Gray. Patrick Maxwell's letter of acceptance mentions his friendship with Gray. Alexander Smart had produced lines for the 1846 dinner, and Thomas C. Latto later that year wrote a song with which to surprise Captain Gray at the 1847 event. Quote at the bottom, "The captain is quite in the dark as to the plot," in a postscript to which he explains that Lauriston is where Gray resides. More on that shortly. A brief look at the following years. In 1847, with Captain Gray present, Maxwell Dick, a prominent Irvine mover and shaker of the time, delivered a poem entitled Captain Gray's Campaign. Also a long poem by Thomas C. Latto entitled The Bard o' Lauriston was recited, and Captain Gray agreed to act as croupier the following year. In 1848, however, the train was late, so Captain Gray and his friend Patrick Maxwell didn't arrive at the meeting till after the dinner had been served. The 1849 event didn't take place due to another cholera epidemic, and the 1850 event suffered the same fate as cholera had continued until shortly before. And in 1851, as Captain Gray died less than 3 months later, we can assume that he was too ill to make the journey through. We see, therefore, that Captain Gray was very involved for 20 of Irvine Burns Club's first 22 years. Despite the mention of Lauriston in the Thomas Latto letter, it was a different clue that led me to find out more about Captain Gray's background. When I was documenting for our website the honorary members of those early years, and I was investigating William Tennant, the Professor of Oriental Languages at St Andrews from 1834, and looking at the entry in the Dictionary of National Biography, I saw this mention of Gray. In 1813, Tennant formed, along with Captain Charles Gray and others, the Anstruther Musulmanic Society, the members of which, according to their code of ambition, assembled to enjoy the coruscations of their own festive minds. Their main business was to spin rhymes, and some of them span merrily and well. And later I spotted in something written by Gray a description of a typical evening at the Musulmanic Society. The bottom paragraph, in Gray's words. "Every chair was entwined with laurels, myrtles and nettles. The mixture of the leaf of the latter was singularly appropriate and happy, as it denoted the sharp and prickly nature of that satire with which the associated rhymesters are determined to sting their calumniators. The dinner was choice and elegant, doing great honour, both in the selection and preparation of its dishes, to the genius of the provisor. Every dish was symbolical, and had its innuendo, denoting either the pride, or the vanity, or the irritability, or the poverty of poets. There we sense the happy atmosphere of evenings which Burns spent with his friends, and also of evenings in Burns gatherings before Zoom." Time for some biographical detail. Charles Gray was born in Anstruther in 1782, the son of an officer on board a revenue cutter. The Dictionary of National Biography comments that his education and early training fitted him for the sea, although I do not know what that education and training was, nor do we know where it took place. In 1805, Charles obtained a commission as a lieutenant in the Woolwich Division of the Royal Marines, and afterwards his 3 younger brothers all became lieutenants of the Royal Marines, their commissions being thanks to the good connections of an uncle. In 1811 he published poems and songs, and joined the merry band of Musulmanics. In the Marines he served for 35 years, retiring in 1841, when he published his second book, Lays and Lyrics, in which appeared his portrait, so now you can see what he looked like. One summary of his character at the bottom of the screen says, "Of cheerful and amiable dispositions, Captain Gray was much cherished by his friends. Intimately acquainted with the productions of the modern Scottish poets, he took delight in discussing their merits, and he enlivened the social circle by singing his favourite songs. An ardent admirer of Burns, he was led to imitate the style of the great national bard." I shall digress for a moment into territory known by folk music enthusiasts, because it links to honorary member William Tennant and to Charles Gray. Some of the words of Maggie Lauder go as follows. The lassies a', baith fair and near, hae heard o' Rob the ranter. I'll shake my foot wi' richt good will, gin ye'll blow up your chanter. Then to his bags he flew with speed, about the drone he twisted, Meg up and walloped out the green, for brawly she could frisk it. So it's an old song from the 1600s. William Tennant used it as inspiration for his epic poem Anstruther, which became one of the most popular comic poems of its period. And Charles Gray, his friend, wrote a sequel. And I understand the Tannahill Weavers revived it in more modern times. You've had the Anstruther part of the connection, now the Edinburgh part. In 2013 in Lauriston I sought out Archibald Place, named after Mr. Archibald's nursery, the business situated there before the houses were built in about 1825. On the map, the letter A pinpoints it for you, north of the meadows. The 1841 census shows Charles Gray at number 11, now demolished. It was to the right of the remaining block. And at number 5, although I'm not sure what the numbering was in those days, so I can't say definitely which door it was, at number 5, the friend whom he brought to some Irvine dinners, Patrick Maxwell. In 1841, Captain Gray began his retirement by publishing that second volume of poems and songs, lays and lyrics, dedicated to his Anstruther school friend William Tennant. After the preface, there's this double page featuring a round robin, containing the autographs of many of the friends who supported the publication. Those of you with 20/20 vision may be able to make out William Tennant's signature bordering the inner ring at upper right, and James Glencairn Burns' signature at far left on the outer ring. When you cross-reference that round robin with all those names, with the honorary members of Irvine Burns Club, the connection of Charles Gray to Irvine Burns Club suddenly becomes even more significant. The list here shows all those nominated from 1828 to 1845. Biographical notes on them all are on our website. The names in bold black are friends of Charles Gray whose signatures appear in that 1841 round robin. All 13 in this group are part of the poetic literary world of the time, mainly revolving around Edinburgh. Another group, in black but not bold, are 10 others whom I can without question also link to that literary world. In 1854, after Charles Gray's day, we see the club looking south at the bottom right, with a possible London link. If we discount the first 2 Irvine-born honorary members in 1828, and the last 4 southern-based ones in 1854, the cross-referencing on this slide shows that 23 of the 35 other nominees, 2/3, were friends or associates of Captain Gray, demonstrating that Captain Gray was not merely a welcome and enthusiastic attender at Irvine dinners, but that he also created, for 2 decades, and despite the hiatus of 1832 cholera epidemic, a strong link between the worthy Burnsians of Irvine and the literary set in the capital. A few reproductions from his 1841 book. It contains the Address to the Shade of Burns, written for our 3rd anniversary in 1829. At 5 pages long, I'm not reading it all. I'll read the first verse to give you the flavour. Hail Burns, my native bard sublime, great master of our Doric rhyme, thy name shall last to latest time, and unborn ages shall listen to the magic chime of thy enchanting pages. Here, also in the book, is the captain's poem written for the club's 4th anniversary in 1830, titled Astromash Among the Stars, because he imagines those at the dinner filling their glasses and spilling, climbing to the heavens and having a great time among the constellations before returning to Earth for refreshment, all before any talk of Musk's or Branston's space trips. I'll read the latter part to you. Then away we'll all be spilling, lads, till of heaven we reach the ceiling, lads. Oh, we'll dance in the moon to some old Scots tune, while the planets around us are reeling, lads. We'll hound the dog and the lion, lads, and follow the chase wi' Orion, lads, and at night we'll regale on the scorpion's tail, while the fishes for supper are frying, lads. When with Venus we've danced a measure, lads, o' the bull and the ram we'll make seizure, lads, and yoking the twain in Charlie's wain come jogging awa at our leisure, lads. 'Twas glorious to see us mountain, lads, and the stars our companions counting, lads. Now we're landed again, inspiration will drain at mair than the Muses' fountain, lads. Oh, lees me on love and liquor, lads, for they baith mak the blood bound quicker, lads. And the bard wha was born on this January morn, like us, took a wacht o' the bicker, lads. Then join me in a lay, my lads, to hail his natal day, my lads, for the tones of his lyre shall never expire, till feeling and fancy decay, my lads. Captain Gray's book was reviewed the following year in the Illustrated London News, and here are 3 quotes from the review. An elegant little volume of collected poems, the production of a free-hearted and accomplished soldier who had put by the sword for the pen, and taken to gather the bay leaves of poetry instead of the laurels of war. Many charming lyrics. Some of our old and favourite songs of which the authorship has been hitherto to us unknown. It is relevant to the final section of my talk to quote from our captain's preface to his first book, Poems and Songs of 1811, which was popular enough to merit a second edition in 1814. He wrote, in the middle of that paragraph that's quoted there, 6 lines down, "But amid the howling waves and blustering tempests of the Adriatic, the fractis rauci fluctibus Adriae, while the author was for several years employed at the blockade of Venice." The background is that Napoleon had become King of Italy, and British ships were harrying Venice. The Unité was a French 40-gun frigate, captured in 1793, renamed by the British, and by then in action disrupting French and Italian shipping off Venice. And in that volume we see an epistle to Mr. David Siller, Irvine. It is an 8-page epistle. Will Burns light friend and bosom crony list to my lays, though far frae bonny? Will he, while lives fu couth and snug, to a poor wanderer lend his lug? While Langsyne left his native plains, land o' 8 cakes and canty strains, and ventured on the pathless ocean in hopes o' honour, fame, promotion. And then to the page 14. But Davy, if in 2 year peace should return ilk heart to cheer, back to old Scotia quick I'll fly, her cakes and usquebae to pry, the auld thack hoose I'll cleed once mair, and whiten wheel the outer stair, and mak the inside snug and bien, for weel I like to see things clean, and nae attention shall be spared to cultivate the green kale yard. I'll plant my cabbage and potatoes, and be another Cincinnatus, nae mair shall Turkish turbaned loun pelt me with stains out of his town. The mention of a Turkish town refers to when Lieutenant Gray, as he then was, and another officer strayed into a remote part of Constantinople and were pelted with stones by some of the locals. No, I'm not reading any of the lines on the screen. Lieutenant Gray describes the howling winds and huge waves of the Adriatic as the waves become one with the clouds, and we trust that the heavenly powers will still the tempest with a nod. The most important detail for us is when it was written. Look at the note at the end. In December 1808, when Charles Gray was a 26-year-old lieutenant, almost 2 decades before Irvine Burns Club was formed. From 1805 to 1809, Lieutenant Gray was serving on the Unité, an Anstruther man, and I ask when and where did Charles Gray meet and strike up a friendship with Siller. Their common interests were Burns's works and navigation. We know that Siller, after the bankruptcy of his grocery business, visited Edinburgh in 1791, but I found nothing definite about that visit. Siller had published his verse in 1789, perhaps contributing to his bankruptcy, so may have hoped to meet other poets, perhaps even some of Burns's contacts in the capital, and there's a suggestion he was looking for a job as a clerk. Siller opened his School of Navigation in 1791, but of course in 1791 Gray was still only a 9-year-old in Anstruther. However, it seems the navigation school was a success. MacJanet, the 1938 historian of Irvine, says, quote, "He often had a large number of grown-up seamen attending his classes." So, had a teenage Gray attended the school in Irvine? It's only a guess, but possibly a reasonable one. Think back to the Biographical Dictionary's comment that Gray's education and training had fitted him for the sea. So, the unanswered but important question is at the foot of the screen: when and where had the young Gray met the older Siller? This slide gives you an extract from 1852 minutes. "Since last meeting, one of the principal and earliest of the members had gone to that bourne from whence no traveller returns. He meant CaptainGrayRM, and after paying a high and well-merited eulogium to his character, proposed his memory, which was drunk in solemn silence." And I've put on the screen a self-description of Gray from one of his poems. "I've been a scribbler from my youth, yet ne'er could reach the true sublime. My forty's not song but Scottish rhyme, part sense, part nonsense, rhyming blether, as lang as hockey's hair and tether." And I've also put on the screen a copy of his signature. A digression into the Siller family tree is relevant. David had 7 children, but only one reached adulthood, his son Zachariah, whose portrait is in Irvine Burns Club, and who graduated in medicine from Edinburgh and later practiced as a doctor in Liverpool. Zachariah had several children, of whom I include 4 here. Looking down that page from Robert, you will see his descendant Norman, a great-great-great-great-grandson of David Siller. He lives in Australia. The photo shows him on a visit in 2017 holding the Siller Christening Cup, which we used at our annual celebration. Another son of Zachariah is David, whom I believe to be the ancestor of the Reverend David Siller of Wetherby, from whom the club purchased the 2 letters written by Burns. Another son is William, the ancestor of the Frederick Siller who gave the club David Siller spectacles and William's Hansel Cup, and is an honorary member. And another son of Zachariah is Thomas, whose descendant Marina, David Siller's several great-granddaughter, lives in BC, Canada, and has not yet visited Irvine. There is another reason for this digression, which the eagle-eyed among you may have noticed. The middle name of Hubert on the left is Gray, and that is also the middle name of Norman's father and his brother. Norman has said, "There is a family story that retaining the name Gray will bring good fortune to our family," but he does not know why this is so. With Gray's death being in 1851, and Hubert's birth being in 1860, I checked Scotland's wills for a connection there, but the captain died intestate and he had a surviving son, so I would discount a legacy connection. Neither is it his mother's maiden name. It might of course be a different Gray, but in my opinion, a link with our Gray seems at least a 50-50 possibility. You may recall that the attenders at an Irvine dinner enjoyed Blythe, Blythe and Merry a Wee, a song Captain Gray published in 1841. You've already seen a few lines earlier, and I show the rest of it here to return to the friendly camaraderie of those 1830s and 1840s gatherings. The last 4 lines were printed in the Illustrated London News. "Blythe, Blythe and merry a wee, see the sun is kicking ben, gie time his glass, for months may pass, ere we hae sic connected again." Then this year, 2021, Ron Budd in Calgary and I met via Zoom. Each of us have been investigating Captain Gray. Ron from having lived in Anstruther, and me from Irvine Burns Club. So coming from opposite directions, each of us has gained from the insight of the other. So coming from opposite directions, each of us has gained from the research of the other. And Ron and I have reached an agreed conclusion that the meeting of Gray and Siller probably occurred in Irvine, that Gray's passion for Burns would have brought him to Ayrshire, and that Gray would have attended Suller's navigation school either as a student or a teacher. Thank you for inviting me to share my information on Captain Gray. I leave two unresolved questions on the table. Is the Gray in the Suller family tree connected? And was it in Irvine that the young Gray met Burns's dainty Davy? We can guess that both answers should be yes. And in summary, arising from an early friendship with David Suller, Captain Charles Gray RM became a key figure in ensuring the success of Irvine Burns Club in its early years, linking a small club in an Ayrshire town to the literary scene in the capital, and possibly even ensuring the survival of that young club to become the respected Burns centre it is today.